Good night, everyone. Welcome to our event with EXATEC Australia. This night, we have a very special guest. Her name is Fabiola Campbell, and she is going to talk to us about networking in times of COVID. But before we start this exciting and auspicious event, I'd like to properly do an acknowledgement of country. I'm going to share my screen with this beautiful Australian landscape. Just to remember that EXATEC Australia acknowledges the people of the Woiwurrung and Boonwurrung language groups of the Eastern Kulin Nation, on whose unceded lands we conduct our activities. EXATEC Australia respectfully acknowledges their ancestors and elders, past and present. EXATEC Australia also acknowledges the traditional custodians and their ancestors of the lands and waters across Australia where we conduct our business. So this is our agenda today. I will just give a quick introduction to EXATEC Australia for those who join us for the first time. Then we'll have our wonderful keynote introduction. I won't spend much time. Most of you have heard of Fabiola. And then we allow Fabiola to talk to us about how she does networking in the COVID era for 30 to 40 minutes, and then we'll open for Q&A, so this can be a more interactive session, and then we'll tell you a bit about upcoming events that are related to technology. Let's start. Well, EXATEC Australia, it's the alumni association from the Tecnológico de Monterrey, or Monterrey Institute of Technology in Mexico, one of the biggest universities in Latin America. However, we organized our events around developing the social, economic, cultural, and health conditions of the communities where we hold connections, meaning that's Mexico, that's Latin America, that's Australia, and not just our fellow alumni, but also Mexican, Latin American professionals, and anyone who's interested in education and the professional development we can achieve with values of cooperation, knowledge, experience, and honesty. We hope to contribute to this social development and play an active role within the personal and professional and economic development of the members of our association, as well as the communities we belong to, and support educational and research activities, especially to those who have impact in Mexico, Australia, and Latin America. We believe we can work locally with an impact in Mexico, but also internationally, and not necessarily with our connection with Latin America, but also here. Sometimes our events, even though are mainly appealing to a Latin American audience, we have had people from different countries, such as Australia, China, or other countries in Europe who sometimes join our events as well. We believe we can go farther if we go together. We have run some activities related to better understanding Australian culture and how professionals work in this side of the Pacific, providing information on migration laws and the changes, facilitating networking sessions, inviting guest speakers to talk about how it is to work in Australia with a Latin American background. And we have also developed some branches that are part of EXATEC Australia around Australia, which really widens our possibilities to strengthen our sense of belonging and connections with other cities in Australia, meaning that if any of people who are joining us today need some advice or some connections in other cities in Australia, we can also draw on those networks. We are deeply interconnected with other Mexican and Latin American associations. We have had the opportunity to talk about the demographics of the Latin American migrants, highly skilled, of course, at events in Fed Square, and also contribute with other not-for-profit organizations for the improvement of our community. This is just a sample of the people who have joined us at a visit where executives from a university visited a couple of years ago, right before the pandemic. So that was the little notch we needed to get more active, and even after the pandemic, explore the possibility of keeping in connection. And I must say, the digital transformation accelerated by the pandemic, starting holding this over Zoom instead of face to face, it's been amazing to really strengthen our connections throughout Australia. We have a very small team of volunteers, but very enthusiastic, that are helping us to activate and promote the activities we run now online nationwide, but we have a series of networks through social media that you can also follow to be across the events we are organizing. And we
Elena,
love,
sorry,
yes,
sorry for interrupting, but
sure,
there are some people waiting in the waiting room that
sure,
is waiting to be admitted.
of course. Let me just go through that. Well, I'll just finish in with the collaboration with other associations and a snapshot of our team, who are most of them present here today and will always be very keen to join us. Let me just check the waiting room. I'm going to stop sharing so it's easier to do this. I admit them all. I don't see anyone in the waiting room at the moment. That was
Awesome.
probably a few minutes ago. Oh, well, just one more. Yeah, because I admitted 5 a couple of minutes ago. So that's all good. Wonderful. All right. So, well, finally, um, we are ready to introduce our guest speaker today, who's the amazing Fabiola, who founded Professional Migrant Women in September 2019. She was hoping to address the struggles that many migrant women experience when trying to secure in a meaningful job and break into the Australian workforce. I am particularly very impressed with the passion Fabiola has to empower professional migrants and make sure we can all shine and make the best of our work experience in this beautiful country. Welcome, Fabiola Campbell.
Hmm. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction, Elena, and also thank you for letting me share this space with you all. Um, if you saw that photo before, that's my son. His name is Thomas. He's 10 years old, and I only have one son. I work as a corporate trainer for the city of Whittlesea, as well as um, running the professional migrant women. Like Elena said before, an organization that aims to close the gap between migration and professional employment for women. Um, so one of the things that I love doing during my presentation is to have interaction. We have about 16 people in this call today, which is awesome. It's not too big, it's not too small. And um, as a facilitator, I really like reading the room and reading the faces of people to see, if I'm hitting the mark or not. So I invite everybody, if you could, to turn your cameras on. And when if you have any question at any time, please ask away, and we can start, moving the session along that way. I will be facilitating the session, but I know that there is a lot of wisdom in the room always. So there might be other things that you do different to what I do. And if you want to share any of those things, please go ahead, and make the session even more meaningful because of your participation. All of the things that I'm going to share are things that I found useful in my personal experience, as well as um, what we do in the program to help other professionals expanded networks here in Australia. So in saying that, what I'm going to do is to also share my screen with you. And let's see. Great. Okay. So as you know, this presentation is called Networking in the COVID Era. And let's get started. As Elena said before, I also would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we are across Australia. I can see that there are people from different places in Australia. So I would like to recognize the traditional owners of the places that you're in, and also acknowledge their elders, past, present, and emerging. I feel that as a migrant, we don't take anything for granted when it comes to the ownership of this land. And I think it's very important to keep in mind that this land was never ceded and it was taken. And we need to recognize that. All right. So I just would like to start by asking everybody, so what do you understand by networking? What is it? How do you experience it? What is your definition of networking? Please unmute yourself and jump in. Pedro.
Yes, I was going to say. Yeah.
Well, I saw that you unmuted yourself.
Yeah, that's right. It would be in very, very few words to mix and talk to people around a room or a space where people are gathering for a conference or whatever it might be, social occasion. Introduce yourself and try to learn, I guess, as much as you can from different people and see whether you can help them in anything and etc. Get some understanding of each other, I guess, and what's in common and what's not.
Awesome. I think that's beautifully said. Can anybody share any other opinion of what networking is? What networking is for you? How do you experience that?
As connection, this is Aira Fabiola. I think
Aira,
networking.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm having some issues with my video, but I'll bring it back. But networking is probably like the art of connecting with others and sharing experiences, basically.
Lovely, lovely. I love that definition as well. Anybody else?
I like how with networking we can help build bridges. Sometimes we don't build those networks for our own benefit, but to bridge two people who need to meet because they will find each other interesting and write what they needed. And sometimes it's just that service of connecting. And by helping others, we help ourselves.
Amazing. Love that. I think that my simple definition of networking is building relationships. As simple as that. And, you know, in my personal experience, the way I experience networking is that, you know, sometimes I start with a business introduction or I meet somebody in a professional setting. But the beautiful thing is that when you build that relationship, those people could become, you know, more than an acquaintance. It could become, you know, somebody that you grow close to, and then they could become your friends or even, you know, your family away from home. So, yeah, share all of the things that you have said. And just stress that point of building relationships. Now, if that is networking, I just would like to hear from you what networking is not. And have you experienced that as well? You know, I'm sure that you would have some interesting experiences about what networking is not.
I have had some experiences of what networking is not. I think first of all, it's not a sales opportunity. It's not a chance to sell your product or your service or yourself or whatever, or to buy for that or to get employment or whatever. Yeah, you're after. It's not the time to exploit, let's say, someone between quotes. But I have been in networking events where I was quite directly attacked by being a foreigner doing business in Australia and stealing business from businesses in Australia. And through understanding, obviously, why the reasons for this person to think like that, etc., we established a conversation and we didn't become friends, but in the end, we ended up understanding each other, I think, and he understood that we were not really there to take over the country, but to provide a service and to meet people, and that was it.
Only to take over the world, but yeah, not just over the country, right? Yeah, thank you so much for that. I think two very important distinctions. It's not about selling services. It's not about looking for or asking for a job. By the way, I suppose that you all are aware of the different reaction buttons that we find at the bottom of the screen. Because I'm presenting, I can't see those buttons myself. But if any of the things that people are saying resonate with you, please, show some support, so we know that there's somebody behind the cameras that are turned off or something, or that, again, we are awesome. Thank you so much, Samantha. Thank you so much, Elena. Okay, somebody else. What networking is not?
Hi, probably I would say is not collecting people on your LinkedIn or your Facebook. It's not just approaching them to have a list of people who can be just someone to give you something whenever you need. It's not a directory, I would say.
Yep, awesome, great. Somebody else?
I will say like something probably more, something different. It's not only about you, so it's about everyone else. Like a lot of people just go to network because you need something, but it's not the event. It's not about yourself. So you need to be open and just listen and just like be there to actually connect with people. Not just, as Luis said, like just not like, oh, have a business card and then I have 10 business cards and that's it. So it's about everyone else as well, I could say.
Yeah, awesome.
Also, it's nothing, it's not something that it's always a short term. Sometimes you can get short term benefits or good experiences out of networking, but I believe it's usually a medium to long term benefit. Like sometimes you connect with someone and years after that, you realize there is an opportunity to do something else together. So sometimes it's a long-term activity as well.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if some of the ladies can relate to that, but definitely networking is not online dating. And apparently it's a very common thing for that happened to migrant women. So I just put that out there. I read an article yesterday, and it's just bringing awareness about that and how to deflect some of those things. But absolutely, I think some of the things that you've mentioned are very important. Definitely not a place to do your sales pitch, to ask for a job, to find or to go, fishing for a date, and to put your needs first, probably. All right. And here are some of the things that I have collected, but it reflects the things that we have mentioned before. So what are the things that might not be good to do when networking? So yes, small talk is important, but just be mindful not to fall into, the cliches, and focus on one thing only. It's better to start asking, open questions. It's also a good idea to stay away from any negativity. Oh yes, I've been looking for a job for such a long time, but it's so hard. Oh, this situation is so terrible. So, place those things back at home. Just leave them behind and bring your positive self. I think that will be a good idea. And the other thing that I think is important is to make sure that you go around the room whenever you can. I mean, if there is a physical situation, go around the room, talk to other people, introduce yourself to different people. All right. Now, the for me, this question is very fundamental. So, why networking is critical is a critical skill for migrants? Uh, before I came to Australia, I thought of myself as a very confident person, and I had a CV, if you like, that could prove that. I did go to university. I did study in one of the most prestigious universities in my country. I work in Caracas, which is the capital city of Venezuela. I work for, an organization that it was very well known back at home. Um, I actually moved from a small city into the capital city, but back at home, um, you know, everybody knew who my dad was, or who my auntie was, or who my brother was. Everybody knew, the school that I went to, and or if I had a casual job here or there, people always had an idea. Even, when I moved to Caracas, to the capital city, saying that I came from Merida meant something for these people. Saying that I graduated from Los Angeles University meant something to these people. However, when I came to Australia, uh, all of that CV vanished in an instant. And all my reference points, anything from, being my dad's daughter, or going to X or Y university, or living in X or Y city, didn't mean anything to anybody. And before I came to Australia, I uh, well, not at that time, but when I look back, I actually think that I was very strong, very confident, and to put it in a way, I thought I was like a superwoman, and after I moved to Australia, I felt that a part of that superwoman died when I entered the country. Um, and part of that identity had to be rebuilt. So that's what some people describe as the migrant void. And these two sculptures actually capture that feeling in a way that I think is beautiful. It's like there's a piece of us that is left behind, and all of those connections that we nurtured, or that were nurtured for us back at home, don't exist here in Australia. And I believe that that's one of the most important reasons why, as migrant, networking is one of the skills that we need to cultivate in a very purposefully and conscious way. Now, let me ask you a question. How did you find your first job? If anybody wants to jump in, please. Just remember back when then, or back then when you you got your first job, probably high school or probably, you know, at uni. How did you find your first job? Xiomara? Oh, I can't hear you. Is it just me?
Sorry.
Era?
My first job, like in my life.
Yes, yes.
Actually was by networking.
Yes.
So yeah, it was I asked my father at that time if he knew someone in his network that would be looking for help. You know, I was 16, almost 17. And he said, oh yeah, good idea. So he said to me, I have this person, I might talk with him, but you had to do your part and you had to call him. So I did. And then they just offered me, you know, at that point, a summer job, but you know, it was just archiving and doing things like that. But it was actually like that for me.
Awesome. So you found your first job through your dad.
Yeah, I asked, and then he went into his network to see, you know, if there was someone, you know, wanting to utilize a 16-year-old girl helping with something. Yeah.
Yeah, great example. Awesome. Thank you. Somebody else?
Sure. I got a scholarship given by a financial institution. And
Yep.
when I came back from that scholarship in the US, well, I didn't have a job. So I called one of the directors from that company. And right away, I got an interview and I got my first job.
Awesome. Somebody else?
I actually went to. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, you go first.
No, go, Alfredo. Come on.
Okay. That actually I got my first job in the Tecnológico de Monterrey. I studied there, my uni, and my first job was in the call center. So I was a student there, and at the same time I was promoting the uni, like with people around the area, people like families that studying high schools around the area, studying in Mexico City.
Awesome. Thank you. And Pamela?
I was gonna say I actually went to my favorite place in that moment. My first job was working in the cinema. So it was in high school. It was summer. So I was in Tec de Monterrey. So obviously they have like 3 months holidays. So obviously all people that study in Tec de Monterrey know that you are used to be like in a lot of things. So I didn't want to spend 3 months doing nothing. I cannot do that. I was gonna get nuts. So I just went basically to my favorite place, that was the cinema, because I knew they also get like free tickets. So it's like, oh, that sounds amazing. Like I'm basically gonna invest my time working there and go to the movies for free. And I just basically just go there, just have a chat with them and just say, hey, I really want to go work here. And it was like in the movies, they just give you the job.
Oh, fantastic. Right. And so again, if we think about all of those experiences, one of the things that they have in common is that usually our first job is obtained due to our connections and our networks. So what happens when you come to Australia and you don't know anybody? Where are your networks? Where are your connections? How can you find those jobs? And the other thing about these that is very important is that probably you found the first job at the cinema, and then you met somebody in there, and years later that person was in a different position, or that somebody in that cinema, you know, knew somebody else in a company where you wanted to work, maybe their parents, maybe a relative, maybe a friend, maybe a partner. And that's how we start building all of those, you know, networks and those webs of connection. So, you know, even thinking back, I think this is very interesting, but a lot of migrants don't realize that how important networking was back at home, because it's like the fish for the water for the fish, right? Your networks are all around you and you don't even notice them. But so when they come to Australia, they say, oh, but you know, I never did networking in my country. Yep, probably that's true, not consciously, but building those relationships along the way is what networking is all about. Now, the fact that we don't have any networks in here when we come as migrants only means that we just need to be more conscious and work for it. So let's take a look at what are the best places for networking. As some of you, so yep, the probably one of the most obvious things to do is through social encounters. So in Australia, it's very common to go to a party or a barbecue. They are perfect occasions for starting to get people, like Pedro said at the beginning, right? Just start a casual conversation. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a professional setting or a work-related setting. It also could be at community events. For us Latin American people, we have quite a few Latin American festivals, and we might, you know, we might drink something or dance or something and meet people in those situations. Is always to keep in mind that, you know, any opportunity is a great opportunity to connect. Obviously, you know, a professional networking events, so things that are more related to work, if we are currently employed. But if not, we can start looking for those professional networking opportunities. And I tell you, when you start looking, you will find that there might be many of these opportunities around. And again, if you are employed, another opportunity to network with people is professional development courses, either the ones that are run in your organization or outside your organization. If you work in large organizations, you might not know all the people that work in that place, but when you go to professional development courses or other activities that are for the staff members, that is a great opportunity to network with the people in your organization. However, in the COVID era, my my go-to place and my preferred way of networking has been LinkedIn. And you know, I'm a LinkedIn aficionado. I am a LinkedIn enthusiast. I love connecting with people on LinkedIn. And obviously, I've been doing that more purposefully since I started Professional Migrant Women. So just show of hands, maybe you can use the icons. How many of you have a LinkedIn account? Yep. Cool. All right, let's ask the opposite question. Who doesn't have? Okay, let's move those hands down. Yeah, they disappeared. Who doesn't have a LinkedIn account? Nancy, you don't have a LinkedIn account by the look of things. Is that correct? Is there anything in the...
She does have it.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
Yes,
a delayed hand.
Okay. All right. Sorry, and I can't see the comments box, so if you can help me with that, Elena, that will be fantastic.
Yes, of course, I keep an eye on them.
Popping there. Thank you. All right. So I think that when it comes to LinkedIn, preparation is key. Again, what I'm going to share with you about the way I network in LinkedIn is based on my personal experience and what I've learned from others while doing this. So obviously, since the pandemic hit last year, especially for us in Victoria, we didn't have much choices but to network online. And because everybody was doing it, as Elena was saying, it accelerated this process of connection and the use of technology as well. I think before the pandemic, I was quite reluctant to use LinkedIn. I was a bit afraid of putting myself out there and probably being judged by what other people thought about me. But at some point during lockdown and having a mission, it actually kind of remove all of those fears and made me feel comfortable with networking online. And one of the things that I learned is that preparation is key. And these are the 4 things that I think are very important. Number 1 is know your value. Number 2 is understand the context that you're in. Number 3 is to be curious. And number 4 is to add value. And I just would like to elaborate in all of those points. So the first thing is to know your value. And I think I have seen this with a lot of the mentees that we work. And even, I experienced this myself. My thinking was, well, but who am I? What do I have to say? What am I good for? These were some of the things that were coming to my mind. So it's very important to, and I don't know if you have heard about the imposter syndrome, but it's a typical way of thinking when you suffering from that imposter syndrome. So what is important? So get clear about what you can do and what you can offer. If somebody sits with you and say, hey, Elena, how are you? Nice meeting you. What do you do? And she said, oh, well, I work in marketing. And I said, oh, really? Have you noticed this trend of online marketing? I'm sure that Elena will have an opinion about that particular thing. And guess what? We all do have an opinion. We all know something about what we do. And the important thing is to think about what we know and what we can share with other people, just in the same way that we will share with somebody if we meet them at a party or in any other face-to-face setting. Something that it's very important for us as professional migrant women, in our organization, is to identify our superpowers. And if you remember what I said at the beginning about the superwoman that I thought I was, well, what was about that person that I liked? What was about that person that I felt proud about? What was about that person that made me feel confident? And what did she know? What does she know? And what is she really good at? Maybe you have a knack for something. Maybe you have a special skill that not many people have. For sure, you know, all of you can show resilience, and you all can speak more than one language. You have international experience. So think about what are the things that are unique to you, that will be part of your superpowers, or will help you add value. And think about what other people's value about you. Again, you know, what would your mom say if they ask, you know, if somebody asked her about you? What would your, you know, big brother, big sister, what did your, you know, previous boss or work colleague, you know, think of you? What would your partner think of you? Think about that. Think about how other people will describe you. What? Whoa, Alfredo is smiling over there. Maybe it was a cheeky smile. um, and think about what people value about you. And if you want to go a step forward, further, ask them. If you don't know what they think about you, ask them. Ask what they value about you. In that way, you know, I mean, sometimes when we are in a negative space, we can't see anything good about ourselves. We can't imagine anything good about ourselves. So go ahead and ask other people what they think about you. What am I good for? What do people look you for? You know, what they approach you for. Those are good questions that you can ask yourself, so you can get clear about the value that you can provide. And once you have a very good picture about that value, then you will be able to articulate that value. And the most important thing is that you need to do it the Australian way. And I I have an example for that. So back when I was working in Venezuela, um, I had a position in which, you know, I had to organize events and different tasks. So I used to liaise with stakeholders, internal and external. I had to prepare some planning. I have to delegate tasks. I have to meet deadlines. And with time, I learned that in Australia, that was called project management. And but I didn't know that, you know. And you know, when I was learning about project management, I was thinking, oh yes, of course, that's what I used to do. So yes, it's important to know your value. It's important to know what you're good at, and then it's important to find a way to say it or to sell it the Australian way. Are we all okay? And you know, up to here? Is that okay to keep moving? Yep. Good. If you have any questions, guys, just please feel free to interrupt or to share your experiences as well. So the second point is about, so once you know your value, now you need to understand the context where you are going to share that value. And one of the most important things is to connect with confidence. When you are not clear about the ideas that you want to communicate, when you don't come across as competent, and you know, and that's the reason why a lot of people feel that they lack confidence. One of the things we need to understand about confidence is that confidence comes from competency. And for you to become competent, you actually have to practice. Yeah. So if you've never done networking before, well, you have an association, right? Before you go and network with other people, you know, outside your comfort zone, why don't you approach people that you already know or that you might have a loose association with? So I don't know if you know everybody on this call, but if you never done the, you know, broad networking, you can start small and you can start with the people from your own community. Take them out for a coffee, call them up, do a Zoom call, whatever it takes. But the more you do this, the more you practice, the more confidence you will come across.
Can I just say
Then-
something related to that?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so one of the good things LinkedIn has is that we usually, if we populate it properly, we would populate our schools or our workplaces and where we did our postgraduate studies or whatever that is. And I found interesting that sometimes people go, oh, well, I've been here 1, 2, 3 years in Australia and I haven't met other alumni from my uni or other people who do this type of discipline I'm familiar with. But if you use the search function on LinkedIn, you can actually find them. Like we might be 20, 50 people joining these sort of events. But if you look on LinkedIn, people associated to our uni, in this case, are more than 400 in Australia. So there is no reason why we would not know anyone. And among those 400, there are people from different disciplines. And obviously those 400 are connected to other people from different backgrounds, in different industries, in different states and cities, and not just in Australia, all over the world. So following the thread, you can expand onto thousands. And surely among thousands, there is someone who does what you want to get better at or learn from.
Yes.
So, yeah, sometimes we underestimate the power of LinkedIn. And I guess some people think it's just to find a job, but it's actually very powerful.
Lovely, lovely, lovely said, absolutely. Right, so after we connect with confidence, we ask people for a chat, for a coffee chat. And I tell you what, always, 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 you know, if you are interested, make it easy for them. Offer to go and meet them where they are, offer to meet them, you know, with their preferred way of communicating. So what do you prefer, Zoom, face-to-face? Do you prefer to have a phone conversation, or you want to meet via WhatsApp? Always try to make it easy for them, because if you are the interested one, just remove any obstacle that might come, you know, on for them. And after you connect and you have your lovely cup of coffee and you learn about that person, follow up. Say, hey, thank you for putting me in contact with this person. You know, I'm gonna contact them, or would it be okay if I contact you again in 3 months, or would it be okay if I have another question and I contact you again? And keep that connection alive. The next thing that I think is very, very important is to be curious. And for this, I would like to use the example of the reciprocity principle. I have quite a few people connecting with me, and they on LinkedIn, and they say, "Hey, Fabiola, I know that you run this organization, and here's my CV. Could you please check my CV and give me feedback?" And I'm like, whoa, wow, you know, I don't know who you are. You know, why would I have to do this for you? You know, why don't you say hello? And you know, it's like when you're dating. Okay, so if you like somebody, you might ask them out, you might go for a coffee, you might go for dinner, you know, before you launch for a kiss or something, right? So the same thing will happen with when you are connecting with somebody face to face or on LinkedIn. It works across any platform. And the reciprocity principle says that when you let somebody go first, they will be then obliged to let you go next. Yeah. So what do I do personally? Say, for example, I meet Elena, you know, one of my go-to phrases will be, so Elena, tell me about your story. And I let Elena talk and talk and talk and tell me, and you know, I hear the things, that she's saying, and then I might ask more questions about that. And I actually go there with curiosity, trying to learn as much as I can about Elena, and I demonstrate that I value the story of that person when I ask the questions. I also think that it's important that when you do that with authenticity and with enthusiasm. And what happens is that at some point, say Elena will run out of stories, and or she might start feeling, maybe I just talk too much about myself, and that's when the reciprocity principle kicks in. And she might say, oh, well, but Fabiola, I just talked too much about myself, so what about you? And that's when you are able to tell your story, and they will be listening to you more carefully, more attentively. Uh, and at that point, you have earned your right of being heard. Why? Because you did it first. You heard the other person. The other thing that does, letting people go first, um, means that you are holding them in high regard. You are valuing them. And because of that, then they feel also more open to hear from you and to hold you in high regard as well. Um, and the last thing, I think that, once you are in that space, what you need to do is to hold that space, to be present. So the last thing you want to do is to start checking your mobile phone. Put your phone on silence. Try to, like, if you're at home, close the door. Do whatever you have to do so you are present, you are there. If you're in a coffee shop, try to eliminate distractions, so you hold that space and you make that time important. And as I said before, wait for your turn, because it will come. um, in very, very exceptional cases, I have had a conversation with a person, and the person has not reciprocated. And when that happens, guess what? You are ready, earn your turn to talk. And in that case, I said, well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, let me tell you about myself. So, if the other person doesn't ask, and I think that will demonstrate low levels of emotional intelligence. But if they don't ask you, as long as you have let them go first, you have earned your right to tell your story. So make sure you make it relevant, and that you make it interesting for them. All right, my third thing, or my third tip for networking is to add value. In my opinion, the best way to add value to others is to help people achieve their goals. But the only way that you can help somebody achieve their goals is to know what their goals are. And for you to know what their goals are means that you have to sit with them and you have to listen to the story. If you are doing networking more consciously, you can keep a spreadsheet and you can add some of those details. Probably not, during the conversation or taking notes, but as soon as you finish your meeting, you might take some notes and then add that to your spreadsheet. So why? Well, because if if I come across with a job in marketing, and I know that Elena is interested in marketing, I think, maybe I can forward this to her, and I can start adding value to people in my network. So it could be in the way of sharing resources, telling your story, connecting with other people. Hey, Xiomara, there is a person that I think will be good for you to meet, and I can do an online introduction. That will be fantastic, because I put these two people in one chat. They know that they have me in common. I say, hey, Xiomara, I would like to introduce you to Luis. Luis is interested in learning what you do, and it will be great if you can have a cup of coffee together. And then I remove myself of the conversation and I leave these two people talking. Easy. But that's one of the easy things that we can do to add value. An additional way to add value to other people on LinkedIn, and in this way they keep you on top of mind. You always flying in their radar and they don't forget about you, is to interact online. How do you do that? Well, you create content, and you can create content about what you do, or what you are experiencing. What are you experiencing at work? Again, I told you before, we all have an opinion. Even if I tell you today, oh, it's cold today, isn't it? I'm sure that all of you will have something to say. Oh no, I think this is nice for me. Oh yes, it's been cold in the past few days. So think about, when it's about creating content, think about what could you share with somebody if you were having a cup of coffee, if you were having, a glass of wine, if you were, you know, passing an opinion about a current event, because we all have an opinion. The other thing we can do in LinkedIn is to endorse or recommend people. We just go to their profile, we take a look at the skills that they have, and if we know that they have those skills, then we can do an endorsement or a recommendation. Remember, every time you do something for somebody else, you are triggering the reciprocity principle. And maybe that person will not do it for you straight away, one-to-one, but you will get it back in a different way. Did you see a post that is interested and might interest your friend? Tag them, put their name along. You can, if you see, a post from somebody, I mean, when we put, ourselves out there, when we share our comments, when we share our story, when we share, what we think, we want some validation, right? So if you go to LinkedIn and you see that one of your connections have posted something, well, show some validation, react, like, make a comment. Oh, that's interesting. And when it comes to making comments, let go of the need to be perfect, to sound smart, to be right. Sometimes something as simple as, oh, that's fantastic, or thank you for sharing, um, that's a great idea. It, validates the other person and it keeps you in their radar, which I think is important. I always do
just
send
one
thank you.
comment. We have 5 minutes
Yes.
more. If you want to open to Q&A, it would be good to do it within 5 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I always send thank you messages to people when they connect with me. And I always respond to messages when people write to me on LinkedIn. Now, other helpful skills that are important. Okay, you made all these connections on LinkedIn. Now you want to move people, from online to face. What will be useful to do? And again, probably we have covered some of those things already. But some warmth and personal share is a great idea. So be positive be curious, be comfortable with asking questions about themselves and answering their questions. I think a lot of people struggle with this. Oh my God, why is this person asking so many personal questions? You know, obviously you need to understand where your boundaries are, but you know, the more you bring them into your story, the more connections you will build. Be goal focused. What Understand what you want to get out of each interactions, and be mindful and purposeful. And obviously, as we said before, display some personal confidence. That's all for me. Before I leave, I just want to say, as I mentioned before, I run an organization called Professional Migrant Women. Our aim is to close the gap between migration and professional employment for women. That's our website over there. And we have a semester, a mentoring program that runs every 6 months. And our next semester starts in July. So if you know anybody that is currently looking for a job in Australia, that wants to find the first professional job in Australia, please refer them to us. And we still have some places available in our mentoring program. And that's all for me. So if you have any questions, again, if I'm happy to answer questions, but if other people in the room could are happy to share what their experiences are, you know, I'm all for it.
If I may say something that I have found quite useful when I was starting to try to understand how networking worked in Australia, is to actually observe people that are very good at networking and listen to them, and sometimes even follow them around the room just to see what they do really. And I have met quite a few people like that that I see over and over. Or I used to see when we were meeting face to face, but I would see them over and over again in conferences, and their role was always to connect people, right? So they would talk to someone, attract someone else, get them talking, and then they would take off and go on and talk to someone else. And I really seriously admire those people. And I think by observing what they do and listening to what they do, you can learn an enormous lot.
I think that's fantastic, Pedro. Thank you so much for sharing that. I feel that I'm a connector myself, but if I can add to what you say, Pedro, the key for that is to remember people's goals and what people are interested in. Because I see Elena, she's in marketing, so, and this person is also in marketing, so maybe it will be good for them to talk to each other, you know. So I don't know, having some cues that will be really useful, and that happens when you pay attention and when you are interested in the people that you're talking to.
Something I like to share is that sometimes when, particularly in Latin American communities, when there is these sort of festivals or parties are bigger, people tend to know each other because they might have friends from other circles. And it's hard to resist the temptation to go in little clumps of people who know each other, and they stay together for the 2, 3, 4 hours that the event lasts. And I really like your point on not speaking to the same person through the whole event. And even in more professional settings, when there is a conference and then there is some networking time, we are prone to go to the person we came with, or just talk to the one person in the room we know. And then we stay in that sort of safety bubble. But then what's the point of going to an event with 200 people if you left the event knowing the same person that was the only one you knew before the event. So I think we need to make an effort, and I take that point from your talk. We need to make an effort to go and talk to different people and really learn something new, meet someone new every time.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Elena. I would like to add one more thing to what you said. Yes, when you go out there to network, try to meet as many new people as possible, if you can, or maybe stay with one or two and try to know them, get to know them a little better. But sometimes it's actually good to go with somebody else, so that gives us a little bit of courage. So go there with somebody and make it your intention to open up and meet somebody else. Yeah. So sometimes little things make a difference, and maybe going with somebody else will give you a little bit of courage, or the courage that you need to actually put yourself out there. So yeah.
We have time for one more question or two more questions max. Does anyone have any question for Fabiola?
I have a comment for my personal experience here in Australia, and related to networking. I honestly feel like what I have seen. I've been here around 8 years, and networking has worked for me, but only for social things, like all the jobs, especially at the very beginning, like everybody, when it's about getting a job as a waiter or as a cleaner or as whatever, network was excellent. All these jobs come through friends, but in a professional environment, it's everything has been by myself, like going to an interview, all this. Maybe the best thing you can do for someone is sending the link to apply to a job. But apart of that, I don't see, or from my perspective, I don't see that networking in the professional environment works as it works in our countries. I think in our countries, because like the social differences, if you know the correct person, probably that correct person has enough power to help others or to use these connections, because actually nobody really follow the rules, so people has more power of that they should have. So knowing these people back in our countries, it's important. But here, because everybody's following the rules, I think sometimes it's more important just to follow the rules that actually try to make friends with the correct person. That's my perspective.
Alfredo, look, I totally get what you said, but I'm going to disagree with some of the things that you say, and I'm happy to be wrong, but again, I'm talking from experience. Number one myth for me that I learned is that not everybody follow the rules in Australia. I mean, there is a huge hidden job market that only is given when you know people. So you only can uncover that job market when you are in the know. What they say is that most jobs are not actually advertised. They never hit, the newspapers or the search engines or whatever. Now, how do we bridge that, Alfredo? By building the connections that I was saying before. Pedro said before, never connect with somebody with the intention to ask for a job. And I totally support that. But if you know somebody that you admire, say, for example, if there is an organization where you would like to work, I will encourage you to start connecting with people from that organization, and have the courage to actually go and say, hey, thank you so much for connecting with me, Luis. I noticed that you work in this organization, and I would love to have a chat with you and learn more about what you do. And that's how you break the ice. And that's how you get to know somebody in that organization that you want, or you get to know that person. And I tell you what, Alfredo, I have hundreds of testimonies of people doing that for myself and for the mentees that we work with. In the past semester, one of our mentees got not one, but 3 job offers after they started networking in this way that I'm telling you. So Luis might not be in a position to give you a job. Probably there's not even a vacancy when you connect with Luis. But by just the virtue of getting to know Luis, of finding out more about him, activating that reciprocity principle, he will ask you what you want. And guess what? If an opportunity comes up at Louis' organization, he might keep you in mind, and he said, hey, I know somebody. Let me contact my friend, or let me contact this person. Or he might send you a link. Hey, Alfredo, there's an opening in my organization, and I can recommend you. So it does work, Alfredo, but you have to know how to go about it. And it's all about cultivating those relationships, just in the same way you had back in your country. But the difference is that intention. In your country, you did it and you did not know that you were doing it. In here, you have to be intentional. That will be my advice. Um, but
Yes, yes,
everybody has
I
their
totally
experience.
agree. I think it's different, but I also think we shouldn't confuse networking or supporting each other or connecting with each other with favoritism or nepotism, because it's usually an indirect thing. It could be direct as well, and I have also seen it among a civil engineer and an architect. The civil engineer had been in Australia for 10 years working in a government position, and the architect was a newcomer, just starting, with a cleaning job and everything. But he was a great project manager. And there was an opening that was looking for a very specific skill set, but sometimes things are called differently, and they were looking for a project officer on, public works or something like that. But the architect had the skills that were needed for that job. So the engineer coached him for putting together a very strong job application, knowing from inside what skills were exactly the ones that they were looking for. And his application was so strong that it was unbeatable. And he ended up having the job, and it was such an achievement because it was even before having a permanent residency. So it does happen. It's rare, but what it does happen, and we've seen a lot among our community as well, is sometimes I might not have, visibility of a job that's exactly suitable for everyone, but I might know someone who knows someone. Or volunteering is also a very important thing. And sometimes networking comes from coming to these sort of events and not sticking to just Latin American community, but also going to the not-for-profit organizations where frequently, just to give you an example, I like performing arts. And browsing through the Oz Circus, which is a performing arts company that's artistic and all that, I was looking at the board members. And among the board members, who are people like us, just volunteering for a not-for-profit, one of the board members was the CEO of Deloitte Digital. So imagine if, in that case, I wasn't volunteering for that, I was just looking for workshops. But if I went and joined the non-executive board or volunteer with Circus Us, I would have ended meeting the CEO of Deloitte Digital, because it happens to be a board member on top of his corporate job. So that happens. And I knew it was him because coincidentally, Luis met him at one of his PhDs collaborations with university, but it's a small world, and particularly coming from Mexico City with 20 million people, I can tell you, Melbourne or Sydney with 5-7 million people is quite a town. If you start connecting with people within the same industry, you ended up knowing what's happening. And as Fabiola said, we had a talk a few years ago about the visible and the hidden market. The hidden market is the iceberg. What we see on sick.com.au is the tip of the iceberg, and the hidden market is the majority of it. So it's worth pursuing for sure.
Absolutely. And if it's not for the short term, absolutely for the long term. You never know.
You never know. Luis, you want to say something?
Yep. Yeah. Coming.
Try again. Not yet.
It's working now.
There you go. There you go.
Okay. Oh, perfect. I thought, Elena, you run me over. And now I see why. Right. So what I wanted to say is, in my experience, networking is not something that you can treat as a secure formula. I mean, in certain sciences, you can say, okay, if you do this other thing will happen, and it's very mechanical. In networking, you're trading with people, so there are so many avenues that you open once you connect with someone. But I want to give you my personal example. What was Alfredo? I've never had the experience that someone puts me in a position just because, but I actually got a job offer that came from applying for a job. And the interesting thing is that somehow I met the hiring manager about 5 or 6 years ago. They were selling something to the company where I was working, and they happened to know most of my colleagues. So at some point, when they offered me the job, they didn't even ask for any references, because they knew everyone in my industry who knew me. So they didn't even ask for that. And the other thing is, I applied for a very specific position that was not a perfect fit for myself, but because they knew people who knew me, and they also saw my resume, they decided to create a different position that was actually like a perfect suit for myself. And that would have never happened. I could have never planned for that when I met these people, or people at work. But it somehow happens if you have the attitude of connecting and exchanging and being helpful. And as you said, Fabiola, awakening this reciprocity.
Just to clarify, those when you said people, they knew me and they knew the people who knew me, it's because back in the day, I think a few years ago, when you were working at another company, you connected with all your colleagues on LinkedIn, and with this partner who was a service provider for that company as well. So it was a connection they did on LinkedIn more than 5 years ago. That nothing happened until this moment.
I actually met them personally, and probably connecting to that you're saying, I realized that I have met them, and I went looking for business cards from the past, because I realized that I had them on LinkedIn, and I was like, whoa, how did it happen? And then I realized, like, oh, I actually met them in a seminar they gave us, and I mean, it all developed from there.
Wonderful. I think, Fabiola, you don't have audio, but you look like you were smiling and saying.
You were talking, yeah. Something happened Fabiola.
Hello.
There you go. Now we can hear you.
No, I was just saying that, the more we dig into this, the more examples we find of how networking works, for sure. And on that, I have put my LinkedIn profile link on the comments box. And, if you want to connect with me, I would love to connect with you.
Thank you, Fabi. Sorry.
I've already done that.
Yes, fantastic. Well, we ran out of time, so we don't have time for any more questions, but what we could do is always connect on LinkedIn and keep this conversation open. I just wanted to add one last thing that resonated with me when you guys were talking about that relationship. It's also good for mental health. On top of all the 20 slides Fabiola shared with us and the benefits personally, professionally, particularly in this time, is good to connect with people for mental health. And we are going to have a guest speaker to talk about us mental health very, very soon. Before we go, I just want to share with you on the chat the information about our next event. This one is not soft skill, it's more like, tangible, a tangible topic about technology. So that's our next event I like to put on the table for you. So you keep an eye on it and register if you haven't done so. And I'm going to share my screen one more time just to make sure you don't forget our next event. It's called Tech Trends, and Tech Trends is going to be part of a series. We're going to start with an overview of the technologies that are changing the way we work. And we have a fantastic guest speaker. He is Mexican. He works in Sydney. He has extensive experience as a CTO and has founded his own company as well. So he's also a success story of entrepreneurship in Australia. And it's going to be perfect follow-up to Fabiola's talk because he works every day with that situation of the visible and the hidden market, and he's particularly good at identifying skills that, as you know, job descriptions and names change all the time, and we are just studying and getting experience for jobs that haven't even been invented, or people who are now in uni will work in positions that don't exist right now, but they will come somehow in a few years. So we're gonna try to touch the fun of technologies that are currently emerging at the moment and getting momentum. Alejandro will talk about the trends in general, will give us an overview, we'll talk about the impact of these technologies in the job market, the skills we need to prioritize to be more successful in what we do. And then, because this is a series, we will have a different keynote, a different guest speaker at every one of our events within the next couple of years. So we'll talk about big data, we'll talk about cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, data analytics, virtual reality, augmented reality, machine learning, and more. So don't miss this one. It's the kickoff of a series of events called Tech Trends, and everyone is invited. It will also be run in English, and I hope you join us to be part of that event as well. So that was that. Please join me to thank Fabiola for her fantastic talk, and thank you all for your participation and your reactions. Thank you, Fabiola, for reminding us that we can really interact, even if it's over Zoom. We can show a little bit of our enthusiasm and feelings. And let's wrap this up. I hope everyone has a very good night, and I hope to see you soon at our next session organized by EXATEC Australia.
Thank you so much, everybody. I love the opportunity to share with you. Thank you for those of you who have sent me invitation. I accept already some, so looking forward to connecting. Have
Thank you,
fun,
Fabiola.
take care, enjoy the rest of the night.
Thank you very much.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.